Dear listener, before the story begins, I ask you to subscribe to my channel. This is the best motivation at the start. And we are starting. Hi there. I'm 36 and my spouse is 38. We first encountered each other when I was a junior in college and she was a senior. We've been a couple ever since. After courting for 3 years, we decided to cohabitate. We cohabited for an additional 3 years prior to tying the knot. A couple of years later, my wife became pregnant and we welcomed a baby girl. Life continued, with the typical domestic disagreements, but nothing major. We always reconciled promptly or even in the midst of the dispute. Just an average household. Upon graduating, I entered the workforce and subsequently switched employers, ascending the professional ladder. Eventually, I was earning sufficiently to afford a 4-bedroom flat. We carried out a substantial renovation there and relocated. Incidentally, my wife also returned to work following her maternity leave and was thriving. She secured a great role and began earning a respectable wage. When combined with my income, we had a highly impressive total revenue. As time passed, we acquired everything. We purchased another apartment for our daughter to mature into, pricey vehicles, a residence filled with everything. I adored my wife and never strayed. I don't consume alcohol, well, in the sense that I don't become inebriated. I might have a drink for a special occasion, but I don't get wasted, or I might have a glass of wine with a meal. Until recently, I was a smoker. We always planned trips together. I took up hobbies such as scuba diving and skiing. My wife declined to dive, citing fear, but she did begin skiing. That's how we existed, organizing vacations, making money, and spending it on our enjoyments. My wife's profession involves international business, so colleagues from overseas would frequently fly in for meetings and such. Just over a year ago, I began observing that when these co-workers arrived, my wife would stay much later than she had for years prior. But I didn't give it much thought, although it did catch my attention. In the evenings before bed, she would start receiving messages on Telegram. Once, glancing over her shoulder, I noticed one thing. When colleagues from abroad arrived, there were no messages in the evenings. A couple of times when she dozed off, I checked her phone, but all messages were deleted. For instance, I clearly noticed that the phone beeped at 11:10 p.m. After she fell asleep, I check her phone and don't see any messages later than 7 p.m. in any of the chats. And then the moment arrived when the worm of suspicion finally took root in me. Once again, she arrived home late, around 10 p.m., and I foolishly joked, "Well, did you see your lover off?" I had never seen such terrified eyes in her before. But when she saw that I was grinning, she immediately grinned back and looked away, saying, "You're a fool." Moreover, she would also occasionally fly abroad to visit colleagues, and once, when the worm had completely consumed me, I couldn't resist and installed a program on her phone. A recording appears in my personal account. I listen and realize that she is in a room with a man. They are conversing in English, but I comprehend everything. They are discussing some everyday aspects of life, laughing. It becomes apparent to me that there's no one in the room except her and him. Then I hear the clink of glasses and her laughter. At that moment, my pulse was already through the roof. I send a command to record another 20 minutes and take a photo. A black square comes to me. I realize that the phone is lying face down, so I send a command to take a photo with the front camera. I receive a photo from which I eventually understand that the phone is lying on the nightstand in the room, as I see a sconce and part of the headboard. After 15 minutes, I get another recording. My hands are trembling as I start playback. More chatting, laughter. Actually, I was already in some kind of incomprehensible state by then. It seemed to me that it was all surreal, that my world was crumbling before my eyes. I poured myself a glass and sent a command to record for 4 hours, after which I just got drunk as a skunk. In the morning on Thursday, my daughter woke me up. It was time for her to go to school. I said that she could skip today. I wrote to work that I was taking a couple of days off at my own expense until Monday. My wife was coming back on Sunday. I sat down to listen to the 4-hour recording, but 40 minutes was sufficient for me, because that's exactly where I heard the moans of the woman I had lived with for over 13 years. I know precisely what those moans are. At that moment, it was like I was stabbed with a knife. I think it hurt so much that I even felt physical pain. I ran to the bathroom and threw up. I don't even know what was more, from the hangover or from this situation. I stood under an icy shower for 20 minutes, then took my child to my parents and said I would explain everything later. I came back, and she called at lunchtime, genuinely asking how I was doing, my love. I stood there silently like an idiot, holding the phone to the kitchen, unable to squeeze out a sound. After she asked a second time, I pulled myself together and replied that everything was fine, referring to a bad connection. I said I was sick and would stay home for a couple of days to rest. I took my daughter to my grandmother's. That day was the toughest for me. I was beside myself. I didn't know what to do with myself or what to do at all. There was such a noise in my head that I couldn't hear my own thoughts. I sat on the couch and cried like a girl. Then anger came, then apathy. But the more I let out my emotions, the easier it became for me. I could literally feel everything I had nurtured all these years in relation to her dying inside me. By the end of the day, I was almost emotionally dead. In the evening, I returned to my personal account and began issuing commands to the phone. Photos from some gathering arrived, recordings where I could hear that she was somewhere in a restaurant, and there were many of them. So apparently indeed, with colleagues. And in the evening, the most intriguing thing commenced. The phone was on the nightstand once more, their voices again, only now there was rustling without moans. And then I couldn't resist, and called. She answered the phone somewhere on the fourth ring, and I could hear her panting. I inquired what had happened, why she was breathing like that. The response was that the elevator in the hotel was out of order, and she was climbing the stairs to her room. I conversed with her for literally a minute. It was incredibly challenging to remain composed and not let my voice waver. I said okay, and that I was headed to bed. I wished her sweet dreams and hung up. Then I sent a command to quickly take a series of photos with the front camera. Here she made an error. After concluding the conversation with me, she didn't put the phone on the nightstand, but on the bed beside her. The front camera began to send somewhat tilted, but generally clear photos. Half of her body from a bottom-up view, her sitting naked in a rider position on another body, her head thrown back. And then a sound recording came, where I could hear all the familiar sounds of my wife, well known to any spouse. That was my breaking point. I saved those recordings and materials, although by that point she somehow seemed like a complete stranger to me. In the end, until Sunday, I didn't attempt to find out anything more, because everything was already evident. I started contemplating what to do next. Divorce, scandal. But what about my daughter? She was only 9. On Sunday, closer to late evening, she came home and tried to kiss me. I recoiled and reminded her that I was ill. I wanted so desperately to tell her everything, but I went to sleep on the couch in the office. In the morning, I got up before her and left for work. I couldn't be near her. I sat at work like a zombie all day. Then I pulled myself together and burned all those recordings and photos onto a flash drive. I even added my video messages that I went and recorded in the conference room at work. The message had questions like, "What for? What were you thinking? Was I really such a terrible husband all these years that you could just discard me like that?" Well, the classic blubbering in such situations. Then I went to my boss and said that I urgently needed to take a week off. I called my wife myself and said that I had an urgent one-day business trip today, but asked her not to pick up our daughter from my grandmother's because I had a surprise for her in the evening. I came home. She was already packing my things and was the epitome of kindness and innocence. But seeing this hypocrisy just infuriated me. I took my bag, tossed the flash drive on the nightstand in the bedroom, and secretly took a taxi to our second apartment, the one for our daughter. It was vacant. From there, I called a friend and asked if he wanted to unwind somewhere abroad for a few days. He agreed. We booked tickets in the evening and flew to Munich early in the morning. There I told him everything. We drank, strolled around, and of course, there were women. Honestly, I no longer felt obligated to my wife in any way. I didn't answer my wife's calls. I only wrote that there was a flash drive on the nightstand in the bedroom, and I wanted her to insert it into the laptop. About half an hour later, my phone was red from calls and messages, but I didn't even want to read anything. I just didn't care anymore. I turned it off. In the end, we hung out in Munich for 3 more days. On Saturday, I flew home. Upon arrival, I turned on my mobile. It hung for about 5 minutes, trying to digest the number of messages she had sent me. I didn't read them so as not to get myself worked up before entering the apartment. When I entered the apartment, it was quiet. I silently put down my bag, took off my shoes, and was about to go wash my hands when she emerged from the bedroom. God, I had never seen her so puffy and disheveled. She threw herself on her knees and began to say something inarticulate through snot and tears, trying to explain something to me. I put on a stone face and asked her not to put on a circus. Then I calmly asked what we were going to do. She begged me to forgive her. More tears and snot. She said that she had gotten carried away, that she didn't understand how it had come to this. She began to call herself scum and so on. But I caught myself thinking that I no longer felt pity or anger towards her. She howled that she loves and has always loved only me, and all this happened only because she had gotten too full of herself. She realized over all the days I was gone that she had shattered our crystal castle with her own hands. But as they say, revenge is a dish best served cold. I said that now we are not husband and wife. Now we are just mom and dad to our daughter, and we will pretend that everything is fine. But I will live my own life, and she can live hers. She is no longer that one and only for me. She's just my partner in raising a child. Maybe someday I will change my mind. But right now the very thought of intimacy with her makes me sick. By the way, I told her where I'd been and what I had done. She said she understood everything and was ready to endure as long as it took. Well, no one forced her. As a result, we now live in the same apartment. Although honestly, I have already purchased myself another one and registered it in my father's name, so that there would be no claims in case of division of property. I slumber almost constantly in the office, although sometimes for the sake of my daughter, I go to sleep in the bedroom. There were a couple of attempts on my wife's part to try to embrace me when I lay down with her on the same bed. I sternly halted them. We haven't been intimate for 6 months. She hasn't informed her parents anything. Of my relatives, only my father is aware. We agreed that for 1 year we would go on vacation as if with the family for a week. Now it will be separate beds for her. I frequently socialize with friends. I purchased myself a motorcycle again, although I sold it at my wife's insistence when I still adored her opinion. I've already gone scuba diving in the summer and to the mountains with friends in December. I have new acquaintances. Among them there are attractive women. I quit smoking. I signed up for a gym and shed 10 kilograms. I sometimes ponder when she will come up and say that she's had enough and is departing, or for example, files for divorce. But she doesn't do that. I constantly catch her gazing at me. To be honest, I don't care anymore, although I see that she is trying. But I console myself with pain. Recently, I demonstratively put a pack of condoms on the table in the office to see her reaction. She came in to say something and, seeing it on the table, flew out of the office like a bullet. Probably to cry. I didn't go after her. She still goes to work, but doesn't stay late anymore. To be honest, I hardly keep track. Once she came up and tried to explain to me that she had severed all relations with that man except business ones. Apparently, she will still have to communicate with him for work, by mail or in negotiations. But she swears that she doesn't even approach him now. That bastard has a family too, by the way. To which I said that her relationships with sexual partners do not concern me, and she is free to do what she wants. I myself sometimes come back after midnight, or conversely leave when my daughter is going to bed. In the household routine, nothing has changed. I still buy groceries. I love to cook and I know how. We have a cleaning lady coming in for the apartment. I pay for the apartment as I did. What she spends her money on, I don't care. Our communication, as if we love each other, is only for our daughter or her parents, if they come to visit. Although it seems to me that if I told my mother-in-law, she would probably strangle her right in front of my eyes. I have a great relationship with my mother-in-law. She is an intelligent woman and strictly honors family values. This is probably another reason why my wife doesn't want to leave. She's probably afraid that her mother will definitely ask what the hell is going on. And I won't lie. The only one I send now with personal requests, reasoning that she should have chosen a lover from the same country and city, and then she would have had a helper. They are a 5-hour flight away. In general, I stigmatize her as much as I can. I like it that way. Yes, maybe I'm a monster now, but she herself created this monster, spending 6 months traveling on business trips or being here in the city with other men, not thinking about her daughter or husband. No comment. Every time it seems to me that my armor will crack, I remember the day I found out everything, what I experienced then, and I calm down. I become granite again. So that's how I live now. Everything is fine with my daughter. For her, we are wonderful parents. I still do homework with her in the evenings. Our mutual friends don't know anything. Maybe when I get tired of testing her, or I realize that enough is enough, I will turn off the bastard mode and sit down to talk to her. But not now. Not now.